Tonight, I'd love to share with you about faith and responsibility. Faith and responsibility. And I want us to look at one simple passage from Luke chapter 17. So, Jesus demonstrated a life of loyalty, a life of morality, a life of integrity, a life of resilience. And he also demonstrated the life of abundance. And one day his students came to him and they said, Lord, with all of the things that you're sharing with us, it's going to take a lot of faith. To do what you're telling us to do, it's going to take a lot of faith. And for example, one of the things that he told him is throw a party and invite people that can't pay you back. And so they said, wow, how are we going to do that? It's going to take some faith. So I want to pick up in Luke chapter 17 and verse 5. Luke 17 and verse 5. And it says, and the apostles said to the Lord, now again, this is in response to helping other people. They said to the Lord, increase our faith. I don't know if you ever wanted to pray that prayer or talk to Jesus and say those words. But here we see his students saying, Lord, in essence, to do everything you just shared with us to do, have a party, invite people that can't invite us back or can't pay us back, or we don't get any kind of reward from it. Lord, this is going to take some faith, so would you increase our faith? And so Jesus responds with wisdom. His response is kingdom of God. His response is revolution, if you will. His response is counterculture. His response is in faith, and it is how faith and love work together. And his response is this. So the Lord said, if you had faith as a grain of a mustard seed, you could say to the sycamine tree. Now, I want you to know a mustard seed can fit underneath a fingernail. And Jesus said, you don't have to have a barrel full. He didn't say you got to have a bucket full. He didn't say you have to have a truckload or a train load, a big container, a shipping container down at the shipping yard. No, he said if you had faith as the grain of a mustard seed, you would say something. If your faith was in operation, you'd say to the sycamine tree, be pulled up from the root and be planted in the sea. And he said, and it would obey you. And which of you having a servant plowing and tending sheep will say to him when he has come in from the field, come at once and sit down to eat? But will he not rather say to him, prepare something for my supper, gird yourself and serve me till I have eaten and drunken, and afterwards I'll eat and drink? Does he thank the servant because he did the things that were commanded him? I think not. So likewise, when you've done the things that are commanded you, say, we're unprofitable servants and we've done that which is our duty. So we're talking about your duty. We're talking about your responsibility. Faith to help other people is our responsibility. It's our duty. It's our response to what's happening all around us with faith. But if we're going to use faith, we're going to have to believe and we're going to have to say something. So I wanted to take this opportunity to just share with you all about the sycamine tree. And there's 5 things that I want to share with you. I can send them to you, I can post them, but I think if you'll just listen to these, you'll gain something significant from this. So think about your life, think about your neighborhood, think about your country, think about maybe even where you are right now and where you've been. But listen to this. Concerning the sycamine tree or sycamore tree, there's 5 things that I want to share with you about this sycamore tree. And the first one is these sycamore trees, they only grow in dry places. And so they have very difficult roots. In fact, because of the climate, it's almost impossible to uproot this tree because the roots are extremely tough. The roots are very, very deep. And to uproot this tree is almost impossible because of the condition that they're in. Think about some things in your life that you may have experienced. Is there some things in your life that it seems like, man, this condition, this situation, this lack, this shortage, this thing that I'm experiencing, it's almost impossible to root out of my life. And the second thing that I want you to see about the sycamore tree is that they produce an extremely bitter fruit. Have you ever had a bitter response in your life? Have you ever had a bitter season, a bitter situation? Have you ever experienced bitter fruit all around you? Listen, only the unusually poor would eat this fruit, and no one wants this fruit because it's awful to bear. The taste is terrible, and you can hardly endure it without being sick. But if you need sustenance to live, you might eat the fruit from the sycamore tree. And just the thought of eating this tree makes a person feel down and depressed, thinking, am I at the lowest place on earth? The third thing is this: only poverty-stricken will survive on it. They're usually planted in poverty streets, in poverty neighborhoods. Nearly all inner cities in the United States of America have streets that are named Sycamore Street. And on Sycamore Street, we see shootings and arrests. We see looting and violence. And we see horrible situations taking place every day on Sycamore Street. How prophetic is that? The fourth thing that I want you to see is this: these trees only pollinate from the stingers of a very painful wasp. And if the wasp stings you, they put the pollen of the sycamore tree into your system from that system, and you won't die from it, but you'll experience excruciating pain. Maybe in our life, we're going through some painful situations because we've been stung by the wasp from the sycamore tree, living in the poverty-stricken condition of Sycamore Street. And the fifth thing that I want you to see is that the wood from the sycamore tree in the days of Jesus Christ was designated for construction of one item. It wasn't a house, it wasn't a chair, it wasn't a harp or another kind of animal, or another kind of furniture. But the wood from the sycamore tree was used to build caskets. Caskets are what you put dead bodies in. So think about the significance of the sycamore tree. And so here Jesus is telling his students, you don't have to live on Sycamore Street. You don't have to live off of sycamore fruit. You don't have to be stung by the sycamore poison. But listen, Jesus said this: we could uproot sycamore systems, roots out of our life. Jesus says here, we can change things. Jesus says here, we can break a generational curse. I'm telling you, the roots could be deep with this poverty and this bitter fruit that we're eating. And Jesus says that it can be pulled up by the roots. Jesus said that it could be planted into the sea so that the effects of this sycamore tree are not influencing you anymore. And listen, in this verse, Jesus said that sycamore trees would obey you. You say, oh, I just wish we had a priest or a pastor or someone with a degree who could help me. No, Jesus said sycamore trees would obey you, and all of the effects of the sycamore tree would obey you. And so Jesus said that these results, these effects, these circumstances that seem to be overwhelming, Jesus said you could say to the sycamore tree, be plucked up and be planted into the sea, and he said it would obey you. Now again, it's almost impossible to uproot a sycamore tree because the roots are so tough, because the roots are so big, because the roots are so deep. But Jesus said that it would obey you. And so I want you to think with me. I want you to dream with me. I want you to believe with me that we can do something about our situation, and it's not fleshly. It's actually a spiritual battle that's going on. And Jesus said we could use our faith to say to the sycamore tree, be plucked up by the root, be planted into the sea, and Jesus said it would obey you. Now, some people could say this, well, I don't know if the sycamore tree would obey you. No, Jesus said it would. Now, whose report are you going to believe? Remember, Isaiah said, whose report will you believe? And the response for us is that we're going to believe the report of the Lord. And so, in the end of this teaching, I want you to hear this. In 1 Peter chapter 4 and verse 8, above all things, have fervent love for one another, for love covers a multitude of sin. So, whatever we're going through, whatever any of you are facing, I want you to hear me. We can use our faith and we can come out of this situation. That's why I'm telling you. Isaiah chapter 61 and verse 7 says, for all the trouble, for all the sycamore trees, for all the stings from the wasp, for all those deep-rooted generational curses, Jesus said you can have and we can experience, and I'm still believing that we can shift this thing and end up experiencing double for our trouble. Do you believe that?